All right, we'll give it one more minute. Hello, everyone. All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming and to attending our second webinar enablement series of our Joist AI Learning Loft. My name is Amanda Seeley, head of marketing with Joist AI. And for those of you joining for the first time, what the Learning Loft is and what these enablement series webinars are is essentially what we're trying to do is provide continuing AI education to our community. So with that said, today we have special guest Christopher Penn. Christopher Penn was with us last month as well to go over more of a high level, different frameworks of generative AI. And this is series 2, part 2, where we are going to go into the 7 use case categories more specific to marketing for you all to use in your everyday AEC marketing workflows. So with that said, thank you for joining. We'll talk about next month's webinar series as well and how to sign up for that. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Christopher Penn, and we're going to get started with these marketing specific workflows. So Christopher, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back with Joist AI, Amanda, and Rohan and the team. Appreciate you having me. So a very, very fast recap. If you missed last month, which you shouldn't have, but if you missed last time, here's the recap in 60 seconds. 3 things you need to keep in mind. Number 1, when it comes to prompting AI, this is true of the AI built into Joist AI. This is true of ChatGPT and every tool that you use, Microsoft Copilot, you name it. The more relevant specific words you use, the better your prompts will perform. Don't worry about being concise. Don't worry about saying too much. AI does not have those problems. It will listen to you, so provide as much detail as you can. Number 2, if it seems like a task is not going well for you in generative AI in any tool, start a new chat. There's a very good chance that there's some conflicting instructions in the past chat history. You've changed tasks. Maybe you're asking about building information management software, and then you accidentally switched to asking about how to make a blueberry cobbler, and now the chat is confused. One task, one chat. So make sure that you follow that rule. And then the third thing, this will make everything better. Inside Joist, in ChatGPT, in Copilot, doesn't matter what you use. Paste this sentence on the end of your prompts. Ask me one question at a time until you have enough information to complete the task. Ask me one question at a time until you have enough information to complete the task, because all AI wants to be helpful. It's like an overeager intern. Like, I really want to prove myself. I really want to do a good job. I'm going to do the thing. And you're like, whoa, slow down. This sentence gives it permission to slow down and ask you questions. And it forces you to think as the human rather than just cognitive offloading a task to the machine. So that's what you missed in part 1. There's more to it, but you'll be able to check that out in the Joist Learning Loft in the past history. Today, let's talk about the use case categories of generative AI, and there's 7 of them. Here's the thing about generative AI. There's an infinite number of use cases because language models are good at language. Name a task at your company that does not use language. You won't find one. From the mailroom to the corner office, every task has some form of language involved, even physical labor tasks, because you have to communicate what you're doing to people. So there's an infinite number of use cases for generative AI, and we bucket the categories of use cases into these 7: extraction, classification, summarization, rewriting, synthesis, question answering, and generation. And we're going to cover some examples in each of these, but you should be getting to think about what are the things that generative AI tools are really good at. These are the 7 use cases. And the order matters. A lot of people want to jump right in and say, I'm going to start making blog content and thought leadership content and all this stuff. But you want to get the other 6 cases down first so that you can have the best available ingredients to give to AI so that it performs and does its task really well. Again, we talked a little bit about that in part 1. So let's start with the first category: extraction. Take some data out of other data, pull it apart. Inside the Joist platform, go into the tools menu and you can load in any document and say, I want you to extract out what are the key points, what are the key dates for this RFP, so when it's due, so that you don't miss details. One of the interesting things, I was talking to a friend earlier today, actually, who was an RFP champion at his company. He said he won the biggest deals in his career, not by being the best price, not even by having the highest quality. He won the most RFPs and the biggest deals at his company because he didn't miss any details. And so using extraction like this inside of Joist for any kind of proposal, any kind of RFP, RFQ, RFI, whatever, will help you show up better when you're trying to win business. Other use cases, anything that's on the web, you can extract. So this is an example. I decided I wanted to see what Netflix was hiring for. So I gave the tool a starting URL and said, extract the job titles from this. And you can do some really interesting things with that. This is from the company Suico. They're in the AEC space. I did the exact same exercise. I said, grab what they're hiring for. They had like 1,100 open positions. From that data set, I said, tell me what Suico's 12 to 18 month corporate strategy is, because you don't hire for things that aren't important, right? Hiring is expensive, it's exhausting, it's a lot of work. You only hire for stuff that's important. So when you go to somebody's job site, you can extract that information out of their site and start to analyze and go, what's their strategy? They were alarmed at how much information they were giving away, but they also discovered that what their competitors were up to, and it was very, very useful for their executives. Anything, any document at all, you can pull data out of. So, for example, when the government releases new information, like, hey, here's a new directive, a new executive order, a new piece of legislation, extract the parts that are relevant to you and say, hey, what's going on in this thing? This was the non-compete ruling and its effects on AEC hiring from last year. And these tools will tell you based on what they've extracted, hey, here's the things that you need to pay attention to. The government tends to release really verbose documents, like hundreds of pages long. No one wants to read that, right? If you want to put your kid to sleep quickly at night, just start reading government documents to them. So use these tools to extract out the parts that you care about. In your business, every business has or should have things like a Google business page or some kind of job listings or some kind of company listings and all important. One of the things that all these companies and social networks makes really difficult is getting data out of their systems. Anyone who's ever worked on LinkedIn and tried to get data about their own posts and how they're performing, yeah, good luck with that. Well, nice thing is that today's model, which you talked about in part one, are able to process video. So what do? You go on system you're trying to get data out of. I like to use my phone. I'll just turn on the screen recording on my phone, go to LinkedIn. If they just a model that can handle video like Gemini and say, extract this information and shares and put it in a format that I can use. And then I can go take that, turn it into a spreadsheet or a database and analyze it. So anything, if you can see it with your human eyes and you can record it, you can extract any data source at all. How many people love Google Analytics? Yeah, nobody. Nobody likes Google Analytics. We are all sort of stuck with it. If you remember from part one, we talked about knowledge blocks, having things like recordings of who your company is, what you do, how you market, who your customer is. And those blocks are handy. You got them ready. You can go into a tool like Google Analytics, just take a bunch of screenshots or a screen recording and hand that to the AI tool of your choice and say, what happened with our marketing. Give it a recording of or a transcript of here's what we did this quarter for our marketing, and then you give it the data and say, you tell me what happened, and the tools will do that very, very capably. Another example, offline. This one is super popular in general. Like, I took a picture of a whiteboard and was able to transcribe it, but this is for sites, for building sites. This is phenomenal. You got a foreman or a site manager, and you can't get them to fill out a report at the end of the day, reporting on project progress. Say, hey, you just take your cell phone, go out, take a picture of the site, put it in the system, have it write up what happened that day and what the progress of the site is. You will save time and you'll get greater compliance with your team, and maybe difficult to work with folks who are not technologically as savvy. Just say, take a picture, load it to the system, have it write up the site report. You'll be in much better condition. So that's extraction. Second, classification. I've got all this data. I need to organize it. I need to do something with it. It's a hot mess. Imagine you have things like spreadsheets of every kind. You need to organize that data and classify it and say, this is good data, this is bad data. If you're a social media manager, you've been doing this for a very long time. Manually, what's the sentiment on this? What's the valence? How many people did this or that? What kind of posts did they react to? Any kind of data these tools can sort and organize if you give them the data. My personal favorite tool for this is a tool called Google Colab, because it can actually do math properly if you need to do any computation. But if you're just sorting data, these things are fantastic. Let's say you've got a bunch of coverage about a site, right? And a new project that's going up. Maybe it's a residential skyscraper. And you've got all this media coverage. You've got all this stuff happening around this. And you want to know what is the temperature in the room. You can take all that stuff, put it into these tools and say, help me organize this. Show me the top 5 negative pieces of coverage. Show me the top 5 positive pieces of coverage, and just organize your data. Inside things like dams and asset management tools, you can do this too. For example, almost every asset management tool, this is from Open Asset, has an API. You can say, if you've loaded assets to the system and you didn't tag them super well, these tools can classify and organize them. I wrote one for myself because I had a folder full of screenshots that were all named screenshot 121, screenshot 122, and so on. Completely useless. So using a language model, I loaded this. I have the screenshots loaded in one by one, and it renames the file to, 2 people sitting on a bench having coffee, which is so much more useful. And the big one, which I believe is available in Joist, actually, I know it is available in Joist, is proposal classification. Like, or you should know, go, no go on an RFP, right? You get an RFP, you're like, what's the likelihood that we're going to win this RFP? If it's something, if the financing's wrong, right? If you want cash up front and they're offering, a 20-year bonded payment, you can say, we're not going to bother bidding on that. So this is one of the most useful ways to use these tools, is classifying business opportunities, because you have a lot of opportunities to pitch, have a lot of opportunities to bid on the ones that you're probably going to win. Use case 3 is summarization. Take big data, turn it to small data. When it comes to using these tools, we have so much data. This is an example, and this is an example everybody should be using. You've got transcription systems. If you use Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams or whatever, you're probably getting transcripts to all of your meetings, to all of your conference calls, to all of the things that you go to. You'll get a transcript of this webinar. What do you do with it? Well, a lot of the time, people just kind of archive those things instead of saying, summarize this. What were the key points that happened? What are the important things that I should learn from this? What facts were discussed? When I do stuff with clients, one of the things that I love to do most is I love to take all the conference calls that I've had with that client, put it into an AI tool for that month, and ask it to summarize. What did we do for this client? What were their reactions? Other times, I will take my entire inbox for a client for that month, and I will say, what did we do for this client? Summarize it. What did we forget to do that we said we would? and gives me a nice list, and they go, okay, quickly, let me make sure that we fulfilled our obligations for this client. So summarization of this data, your company is generating this stuff like crazy. It is incredibly valuable content, and yet we just kind of sit on it instead of making use of it. Inside of Joist, take any document, highlight the section you want, and say, summarize this, condense this down. Maybe the first draft of a proposal or a cover letter. You're like, oh, that's a pretty beefy chunk of text there. You might say, let's summarize this down. By the way, you can also do the reverse. You can say, okay, let's take this very terse piece of text and unsummarize it, make it longer as well. You can take an entire proposal and say, summarize the key points to make this proposal better. Right. So if you know, for example, that there are certain conditions in the proposal that you need to meet, tell the Joist system, tell me how we can improve our response here. What are the things that we maybe missed? What are the things that we forgot about? The summarization capabilities in the platform and having a chat with your documents is incredibly valuable for making sure you don't miss things that are built right into the RFP that you're responding to. And it doesn't have to be RFPs. This is the document chat. So any document you can put in and have a conversation with. You can upload more than one document at a time. Other things, any kind of review data, any kind of feedback data. If you have, and you should, if you're a firm of any reasonable size, you should be asking for customer feedback on a regular and frequent basis, and then summarize that feedback and come back and say, the number of people who had these things to say was this, and the things that people wanted us to improve is this. Summarizations, one of the best use cases for these tools, because the probability of it hallucinating, aka making things up, is very low, because you're giving it all the data. You're not asking it to invent anything. You're asking it to take the data I've given you and just shrink it down. An example from SEO, the SEO world, last November, Google made this big change in how it does rankings, and all of the talking head marketing influencers to start foaming at the mouth on YouTube. 400 hours of foaming at the mouth and self-congratulatory YouTube broadcasts about this thing. I'm not sitting through that. So grab the closed captions, hand the closed captions to, I used Gemini for this, and said, summarize the main points from this giant corpus of foaming at the mouth. And it came back with 30 points out of 400 hours. 30, that's it. And of those 30, 27 weren't new. 27 were not anything particularly helpful. And so it saved me so much time. Think about the things you have to sit through as a marketer, as a manager, as anything, from town halls to customer advisory boards to zoning board meetings and planning board meetings. Take all that data, crunch it down, especially if you are trying to navigate and negotiate a situation that you're not familiar with. So let's say you're dealing with a zoning board, and maybe the zoning board just got elected and there's a bunch of new faces, and you get the recordings from a couple of meetings. You can build things like personality analysis based on the words that people say in those transcripts, so that when you go to bring your project before the zoning board meeting, and there's that one crazy neighbor who's like, I don't want any of these kinds of people building things in my neighborhood, whatever, you know what to expect because you've done the summarization of all these meetings. Inside tools, for example, like Gemini, you can even give it an individual YouTube video and say, summarize just this video. Tell me the high points. So these tools are now beginning to get integrated into everything. If you open up Claude Desktop or ChatGPT and you turn on its connectors, or Gemini and you turn on its connectors, and it's available in your Google Workspace, you can say, summarize my inbox. What do I need to respond to today? And these tools will enable this capability, saving you a lot of time and a lot of headaches. Fourth use case, rewriting. Turn one form of data into another form of data. I got this RFP. No, it was an NDA. I got this NDA from this guy. I read this thing. I'm like, what happened here? Did you copy and paste this off of Reddit? Were you drunk? Like, what's the deal? And turns out both things were true. I handed it to generative AI and said, rewrite this in to meet the standards of a normal NDA. And it did. And then I handed it to my human lawyer to review, because we never, ever, ever use AI output in finance, law, or health that has not been reviewed by a human expert, right? Those three domains, finance, law, health, always have a human expert vet the results. I had my human lawyer review the revised version of the NDA, and they said, you can sign this version. There's like, it wasn't, if you had signed the first version, it wouldn't have been that bad because it would have been completely unenforceable, but this version correctly protects both parties. So rewriting any kind of legal document, you can have these tools do that, and then, of course, have a human subject matter expert validate them. You can have these tools be the best professional development and training tools you have ever known. When I started working with the AEC industry, 5 years ago now, I didn't understand what BIM was. I had no idea what building information management software was. I knew it was software, obviously, but I needed someone to explain it to me. And a lot of people tried, and uh, they tried. But it didn't make sense to me as an outsider at the time. So I said, this is a recent example, explain this to me in terms of pizza. And it basically says, hey, you know what? BIM will pre-bake a digital version of the pizza so you can decide how badly it sucks. And if it looks good, then you can say, okay, now let's actually bake the pizza, and you won't waste materials and you won't end up with a pizza you're not going to eat. Like, I get this. I understand what BIM is now. It's digital twinning of a project. Now, there's more to it than that, but this analogy was super helpful. What do you know well? Is it billiards? Is it painting? Is it swimming or dance or 80s pop trivia? Whatever the thing is that you know best, take these tools and, even the apps on your phone, and ask the tool to explain the thing you don't know in the context of the thing you do know. Maybe you understand wine tasting really well and you don't understand quantum superposition. Ask the tool, explain quantum superposition to me in terms of wine tasting, and you will get explanations that fit your brain and your knowledge and help you understand things so much faster and so much better. This is a real memo. Bob, you sent over 2 months of invoices one day. Of course, it's not done. It's not going to be done anytime soon because this stuff takes time. And if you needed it sooner, you shouldn't have let it sit on your effing desk for 2 weeks. You can F right off and you'll get it when you get it. Go F yourself, Karen in accounting. Karen would have been fired. However, Karen had the good sense to put this into ChatGPT instead of her email, and instead said, rewrite the following memo in a professional tone. Dear Bob, I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to reach out. You get the idea. Anything that you're not sure how to word, say it to a machine instead, and say it bluntly to the machine. You can load it up with all of the profanity and whatever that you want, and it will rewrite it. And the rewrite will be really good because, yes, you use profanity and unprofessional terms. However, you were also very clear about what you wanted to communicate, and the tools can help you communicate in a very clear manner. So use these tools to say what you want to say without getting fired. Another example, load up any RFP and just say, hey, rewrite this thing, turn this into this other thing. How much boilerplate can we reuse? Inside Joist, the platform does this really, really well. You can take something and just say, I want to rewrite this thing and turn it into something else. Rewrite this entire paragraph. Rewrite this entire RFP response. Maybe you had someone on another team and writing is just not their strong point, but you got the core information. You'll notice down here, there's things like document attachment. There's audio attachment. You can have someone just sit down with your subject matter expert at your firm and say, okay, let's talk through this RFP, and just turn your voice, you make an audio recording and just load that up and say, here's how we're going to respond to this. And the tools can rewrite that and polish it and make it professional, or the tone of voice that you prefer. One of the things that I love about all of these tools is that it allows us to turn voice into text, which for a lot of people, particularly, I mean, just in general, but a lot of people in the AEC industry are more comfortable talking than writing. And if you want to get great answers quickly from someone, You can say, hey, can I just turn on the voice memos app on my phone and record this conversation? You put your phone on the table and then you have the conversation. And particularly with a lot of subject matter experts, you will get great information out of them that they were not going to sit down and write to you. And then you can use that within a system like Joist to inform um, your proposals, your documents, everything, because you can put that all in the library and you can have interviews from your subject matter experts. Here's how I would approach the design of a prison for the Indiana Department of Corrections, right? And how we're going to handle specific security requirements. Your people know that. There's so many people that work with you and for you that have knowledge that's trapped in their heads. Voice and these devices is the way to get it out, and then you can turn it and rewrite it into whatever format you want. The fifth use case category is synthesis. Take small data, turn it into big data. Real simple example within the Joist platform, just start adding files to a chat box. You can say, I want to talk through these 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 documents and ask questions of them, synthesize the boilerplate that you need for maybe an industrial lighting proposal or maybe a commercial construction project. You've got all the data. There's a very good chance that for any given RFP response, you've probably written a similar RFP in the past. If you've got stuff in your library, you've got stuff in your workspace or your collections, you can load it all there, chat with it, and pull it together. One of my favorite tools for synthesis is Google's free Notebook LM. This is a tool that is an interesting synthesis tool in that it will only answer questions from documents that you give it. So if you upload a document, in this case, I've put our sales playbook into Notebook LM, and if I ask it questions about a competitor, it will say, I can't help you. You didn't give me that information. I can't help you, which is very useful for reducing hallucinations, for reducing responses where the AI model, in its attempt to be helpful, is not being truthful. This tool puts truthful ahead of helpful and says, if you didn't give me the information, I'm not going to answer it. Additionally, it does some really, really, really cool things that you can use at your company. There's 4 interesting features: audio overview, video overview, mind map, and reports. And the reports are obviously very straightforward, but let's look at, for example, mind map. I'm going to bring up an actual live one here. I can go into my sales playbook and see what's happening in my playbook, and I can then look at any particular section, see what's going on in that section. I can look at tap on an individual tab, and then it will ask questions of that and tell me what's in my sales playbook. Right? Super helpful, super useful. Another feature that was one of my favorites is they have audio. It's called audio overview. It's essentially a podcast, right? It creates, in this case, a 30-minute podcast, and you can give it specific prompts. So you could say, build me an audio podcast for objection handling. And the 2 synthetic podcast hosts will have a discussion. And what's so interesting and so fascinating is that it becomes a professional development tool, a training tool for you to use. So let's say you're doing your marketing and you want to make some training materials for a new person on your content team. You can put in your sales playbook or your marketing playbook or those knowledge blocks that we talked about in part 1, put them in here and say, create an audio overview for my new employee, explaining to them how we do things. And that in itself was pretty cool. A lot of people were doing that. But just recently, about 2 months ago now, they introduced video playbooks. So let's go ahead and get this playing. And so what it does is it creates essentially let's see, I can't control the video. It creates a slideshow, a video slideshow of your playbook, and you can see or your document, and it creates some moderately attractive slides. I mean, they're not great, but think about this for making training videos internally. Think of making videos for customers, right? If you have customers that are constantly asking the same question over and over again, you can create these things and just hand them to people and say, here is the automated answer to these questions. In terms of other forms of synthesis, If you're a marketer and you're trying to figure out how do I create content at scale, synthesis is a great way to do this. This is an example of a newsletter that we publish every Monday morning that we have an AI agent that goes and gathers up 1,900 different articles a week on AI. We have an ideal customer profile of the people who are our customers. Then we have a language model that reads each article and scores it 1 to 10 as to whether our ideal customer profile would find it useful or not. And then it stores it in a database. And on Monday mornings, I hit make the newsletter, I push a button, and it spits out the top 10 articles. And now I have an additional newsletter that is tailored to my audience that answers the questions and needs and pain points they have. And my level of effort to produce that is roughly about the same level of effort as it takes me to make a cup of coffee. But I'm creating valuable content that answers our customers' questions. You can do the same in your industry, in your vertical. If you do industrial, if you do government, if you do commercial, there's so many articles, so much content people are creating. This is a way to sift through it all and find the stuff that is most useful to your customers, or maybe even just to your own team, right? If you've got stuff and people are asking you questions, you can create stuff like this with today's tools. Another example of synthesis. A friend of mine and I were hanging out in Washington, D.C. at an event. And she was saying, I would love to write a book, but I just don't have the time. And I said, yeah, but you post on LinkedIn like 3 times a day. And she's like, yeah, but I can't just sit down and write a book. So what do? We exported 2 years of her LinkedIn posts, handed them to a Claude's coding agent, which can do more than code. And I built some sub agents to essentially read her LinkedIn posts. And we came up with an outline for a book. We came up with a chapter by chapter summary of her new book. And then the coding agents wrote the book by extracting and summarizing and synthesizing from all of her posts, following the chapter outline. Now, here's the thing. It wasn't synthetic. It was her words, copied and pasted from all of her LinkedIn posts, just sort of pulled into a logical sequence. So she's still the author. It's not a machine that she's still the author, but now she has a book and she didn't before. These tools are incredible at synthesizing ideal customer profiles. One of the most useful use cases for them is to say, here's my customer data or my prospect data. Help me build an ideal customer profile. Who is my ideal customer? Or even better, do that and then build a competing one to say, who are my competitors' ideal customers? Using things like people's LinkedIn profiles, using things that's publicly available data, and synthesizing this stuff so that you can then use it in your sales playbook and your competitive messaging and all of your alignment stuff. You can create these things in relatively short amounts of time. Sixth use case is question answering. Answer questions by data. Here's my data. I want to ask questions of it. Right. Here's an RFP. I have questions from it. Here's, what things can I reuse from previous RFPs? This is built right into Joist AI, right? So you can upload it and say, I have questions about this RFP. What do I need to know? What do I have? What don't I have? What do I need to go get? Who do I need to talk to in my organization to get this information? All that's available right in the platform. And if it's not, there's a deep search functionality right at the bottom where you can say, go and search the information out. So maybe you're doing a municipal proposal and you need to understand the building codes for Eagle Valley, Indiana. You can say, I need the building codes for Eagle Valley, Indiana, so that I can create this proposal appropriately. Ask questions of your data. Ask questions. And again, this is all stuff that's right within the Joist platform as well. You can say, I want to know, how did I do on my responses? Ask questions of your legal agreements, right? Any legal agreement. I love doing this with NDAs. I have 5 things I look for in an NDA. How bilateral is it? What's the termination? Stuff that I care about. I have that as a private list. And every NDA, I put it in and I put this thing in and say, hey, should I sign this? Yes or no? And it will give me a report back. A big one that is super important in today's world is looking at the terms of service on any piece of software. I I have a GPT that I set up inside Chat GPT. I just give it either a URL or the document, the terms of service itself, and I say, evaluate it. And it runs through a 10-point checklist of saying, how safe is my data? Will the company use it to train their AI? Who will they give it to on request, et cetera? And I can judge, should I use this AI tool or not? Because I can ask questions of the data. And this applies online and offline. So this is an example. I am uh, what I'm doing in this video clip is I first scan the manuals of my plumbing system, and then I point my phone at the I later learned a pressure release valve and ask it, hey, why is this thing leaking? Like, why is this thing dripping water? Um, it goes and it looks at the manuals. It does a quick web search and it says, hey, that's the pressure release valve. It's fine. You don't need to call a plumber. Just tighten it by hand and make sure it's working. Now, that's a fun example. Save me some money on plumbing, but think about our world in AEC when we were doing site walkthroughs, right? I can hold up my phone with my AI app and be asking questions like, hey, how does this compare to the blueprint that we have? Does this look like it was built correctly? How do those welds look? Those welds look a little off. Anything where you want to look at something, you can use these tools in real time, in real life. As an example, if you're trying to work on a project design and someone says, hey, we need this to fit the feel and character of the neighborhood. Great. Walk down the street with your phone on, do the video recording and chat live with the AI to say, each building, explain to me what the architectural designs and characteristics of this building are. And then you'll get a nice summary at the end that you can then put into a system like Joist and say, here's what we observed in the real world environment for this project. And here's how we're going to blend in with the environment. So all the major platforms have live video now in them. They're phenomenal, even at a personal level. So you can go, for example, if you're in your hotel room, you just got your destination, open the curtain, hold the phone, say, I'm looking out the window at my destination here in Boston, Massachusetts. What's nearby? What should I go see? Right. And it will tell you, like, hey, here's the things that are open today that you can go see. If you can see it, these tools can work with it. The last category is generation. How do I make stuff? And this is the part, it's why it's at the end. This is the part that people love to skip to, but you need to get those other 6 use cases in your head first because they provide all the data that you can use to generate, right? So we all know, write me a blog post about building information management. Okay, cool. We've all done that. That's fine. That's a bit like taking a Harrier attack jet to the grocery store. Like, yeah, you can do it, but it's not the best use of the tool. Any document at all, anything that is language, these things can write, they can generate, they can make stuff. This is an example of putting up a new privacy policy and what laws it had to be guided by. I prompted the tool, it spit out the results. I then had a human lawyer go and review it. They said it was fine, and I dramatically cut down the amount of time it took to get this privacy policy in place because the tools are very, very smart at it. These are the best coding tools that have ever existed. In terms of software development, in terms of building stuff that you want, these tools are absolutely incredible. This is an example. I wanted a banner for my blog, and the banner says, would warn people when they're reading an old post. And there was like a gazillion and a half, plugins for WordPress that all charged me $20 a month. I'm like, no, I don't need that. So I went to a generative AI tool and said, can you write a WordPress plugin that does this? And it said, sure. And we spent some time and it did it. This is one of my favorite services in the past was a tool called Figure It Out that had these lovely things. You could put time zones in and it would show you the world time and the time zones you specified. And the cards would change color based on the time of day. They went out of business in 2015. It just closed up shop. They're gone. I was like, oh, I really wish I could have that again. And then I said, maybe I can. Maybe we can build our own version but build it my way instead, where it's completely private. There's no external dependencies. I don't have to pay anything. And we did built a Chrome extension. It's actually available for free in the Chrome Web Store. If anyone wants to try it out, there's a link in the slides. You'll notice, however, at the very bottom, there's a small ad because now I want to start thinking about, and we talked about this in part 1 a little bit, what can I do that I couldn't do before? What capabilities does AI give me as a marketer that I couldn't do before? I can create software that's legitimately useful and give it away, but embed my ads into it so that people have it, are likely to see it. Another one, this was a really interesting tool. So a friend of mine, I was sitting in a hotel room and they're like, "Oh, you got to check out this tool. It's so cool. You can take any document at all, and just open it up, and then you press a button on your keyboard, and it will listen to what you have to say and transcribe." I'm like, "That's cool. I like that." And I looked at it like, "Wait a minute, that's the Whisper model that they're using," and they're like, "Yeah, so." I'm like, they're charging $250 for what's basically a GUI, an interface on top of somebody else's software. Like, I can build that and I can build it better. So I did. In 2 hours, I sat down one night and said, "Okay, let's build this thing." I call mine Super Key. I hold down the button, I start talking, and it starts recording the information, and then it spits it right out onto the screen. So here's an example of just me talking into the microphone. And there it is. It spits right on screen. I spent $0. Well, that's not true. I have a subscription to Claude for this. Um, but I spent 2 hours having the tool build it for me. The key thing is this: I wrote zero code. I typed no code whatsoever. I thought, I asked lots of questions. And I was very clear and exhaustive in my answers. And the tools did the coding and built the software for me. Think about, as a marketer, think about all the things that you have in your MarTech stack, how much stuff is in there, and how much of it is charging you $9.99, $19.99, $99.99, $2.99 a month, $5.99 a month, whatever. How much of it are single point solutions that do one little thing that you're paying money for that you could have a machine build for you and do it your way? My big thing on this front: SEO software. SEO software charges an arm and a leg, and it doesn't have to. So what do? Build my own. Just build my own SEO software. Then it's mine. There's no monthly fee. There, I do have to, keep it up. I have to to maintain it, but it does exactly what I want, the way I want it done. So those are the 7 major use case categories of generative AI. You'll note they're all over the map. There are all different ways that we can use these tools. There's so many applications. You can do things like write fiction novels. You can do anything that you can think of. The 3 skills that I think are so important when it comes to use cases. Number 1 is being a critical thinker, being able to question AI's outputs. Number 2 is being a good curator of data, right? Of being able to curate data and know where it is in your company or outside your company and how to get a hold of it. And number 3, being a creative thinker. How good are your ideas? How many ideas do you have? And how can you use these tools to bring them to life? So, with that, I believe we are ready to leap into some questions.
All right, Chris, we have a few questions here, and I prompted the crew to see if they had any more. But first question, can you instruct an AI not to hallucinate? And before you answer that, Chris, because I want you to talk all-encompassing AI, but I do want to emphasize that within the Joist AI system, when you do chat, when you do generate, it's going to use the information that you have within the Joist AI system, learning from all of the knowledge within the system. And it's going to reference where it pulled that information, as well as ask you to fact check if it feels something might be wavering. But anyways, without that, so Chris, go ahead and answer the all-encompassing question. Can you instruct an AI not to hallucinate?
No, you can't. You can't structure that because a hallucination is fundamentally a model attempting to be helpful to fulfill a directive that you have given it. And either you've given it conflicting instructions, or you've given it, asked it for information it does not have and doesn't have the ability to retrieve, or it has learned wrong information. In all of those cases, um, think of it like this. You go to the library and you ask the librarian for a book. You say, hey, I would like a copy of The Joy of Cooking. And the librarian just runs to the stacks, runs back and says, hey, I found The Joy of Sex. That's close, right? And you're like, no, that's completely different. Um, what that is, that's effectively what's happening in a lot of cases with hallucination. So you can't ask it not to hallucinate. What you can do is provide data, provide more information, um, so that it draws upon it. So that's one of the reasons why that first prompt that we looked at the very beginning of ask me one question at a time until you have enough information to complete the task is so important, because it knows when it can't fulfill a directive. So instead it will say, hey, I don't know the answer to this. Would you provide it, please? And again, we talked about in session one, it's a lot like delegation, right? It's delegating to a brand new employee. Would you ever say to the employee, "Oh, just go do a competitive analysis"? Like that? No, that's going to go so badly. You would say, "Hey, here's who our competitors are. Here's who we are. Here's our value proposition. Here's how we do our marketing. Here's our reports. Here's this. Here's that. Now go to the competitive analysis using this framework, and guess what? They'll do a great job." Right. So that's how you prevent hallucination, by providing more data, providing very clear instructions. And if you want to get super technical, breaking things down into smaller tasks, because there's a lot of very complicated math behind the scenes, but you can, after a certain point, overload a model. It's like going to a librarian and asking for 30 books all at once. Like, no, no, no. Ask for 2 or 3 at a time, and just, let them go get stuff and come back.
And then the next couple questions are for our team. So can Joist AI analyze audio, video, and does Joist AI chat search the web as well? Both of which are on our product roadmap. So all of you, hopefully you're receiving our monthly product updates as well as what's to come. As well as I want to take a moment here. I'm going to drop this in chat. So next month's enablement webinar is actually going to be specific to Joist AI, applying what Chris has talked about today within the Joist AI system. So essentially taking the knowledge that Chris has provided and then being able to use our system for those instances, as well as continuing to talk about those product roadmap items like you're talking about here, James. All right, for Chris, what are the top 5 skills I need to learn to be a go-to AI resource in my firm?
Number 1, you should be good at prompt engineering. Number 2, you should be good at data curation, what the nerds are now calling context engineering. But essentially, where's the data, and is it in a form that machines can read? Number 3 is creative thinking. Can you think creatively? Number 4 is having a landscape view of what tools and technologies are possible. For example, and this is one of my favorite examples I love to give. You can take an RFP, and in a tool that generates code, you could say, turn this RFP into an interactive video game. And it will. You'll make a little sim tower builder or something like that. You can take an RFP and say, convert this into a pop song that would be sung by a 90s boy band. And then feed it to a tool like Suno or the new 11 Labs product 11 Music, and get listenable pop. Right? Is it great? Is it going to win a Grammy? No, but it will get you somewhere. And the 5th and probably the most important skill is that critical thinking skill of who's calling BS on AI's outputs. Whose job is it to ask what could go wrong? Who's looking at AI output and going, you know what? The last 6 images this tool generated were all of white dudes. Well, and we know that we work in an area where the population is statistically 72% not white dudes. Yet all the machine is spitting out is this particular bias. So those are the major skills that I think that you need to have in the age of AI.
Chris, any last final thoughts for everybody here today?
The big thing is there's an infinite number of use cases for generative AI. You have to broaden your mind as to what the machines are capable of doing, and the list gets longer every single day. And then think about how can you bring that data in? So for example, there is on your phone, most phones have LiDAR scanners now. That's how to do face recognition stuff. They also can do things like build a 3D blueprint of a room, right? So you can wave your phone around the room. If you see me at like, SMPS events, I'm usually like wandering around the library just doing this for fun. And then you can take that data and bring it into systems like Autodesk and actually render building plans from things you scan with your phone. And Autodesk has its own programming language, which generative AI tools can speak, which means that you can start it means you can start bringing generative AI to tools and things in your AEC world that you traditionally didn't have it. The capabilities of these tools, and we said this in part one, double every 6 months in terms of their intelligence, in terms of what they can do, which means the more you get comfortable with them, the more capable you become as a person, as an employee.
And then, Chris, probably the most important question we've had today. Tell us about an item behind you.
Oh, there's so many to choose from. I'll go be a commercial jerk. My new book, Almost
Shameless.
Timeless 40 Foundation Principles Generative AI, is available at AIforMarketersBook.com. However, that's not the interesting one. The interesting ones are the 100% pure alcohol that is left over from the pandemic for making my own hand sanitizer. It was in a short supply. And this commemorative 200th piece of currency from Ukraine, which commemorates the Battle of Snake Island, in which Ukrainian resistors basically told a Russian ship to go F itself. They were later captured and returned as prisoners of war, but it is a nice commemorative thing to remind folks that fight is ongoing. But I've got so many other things that maybe another time we could talk. I'm sure people are wondering about things like, the chicken.
Well, everybody that's here today, so the next couple months, we're going to have, like I said, next month's webinar, we'll be talking about Joist specifically. We have a couple more guest speakers in October and November, and then we're bringing Chris back again because, in 4 or 5 months from now, AI could be a completely different ball game, right? So anyways, dropped next month's registration in the chat. Post this webinar, we'll go ahead and send out Chris's slides as well as a recording. And then with that said, we really appreciate you guys taking the time. We hope you are getting a lot out of these ongoing webinar series. If anybody has any suggestions or there's topics that you would love to see, either drop us a note, let your CS team know, because we want to make sure that we're providing you the best education going forward, not just with the Joist AI platform, but just continuing ed surrounding AI in general. But without further ado, thank you everybody for taking the time today. Look for that follow-up email and we will see you next month. Thank you so much, Chris, for taking the time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.